Today, we are making a green bean casserole. Just on the fresher side, we are skipping all the canned ingredients, making a really good bechamel with our fresh green beans. You're gonna want this on your table. I'm Trace Barnett and welcome to Garden Party. I'm over the stove here blanching my green beans. So no matter if you're using fresh green beans from the produce section or like me if you're using green beans from your garden fresh out of the freezer, you're gonna wanna blanch those beans for about 5 minutes. Now I've taken my beans, I have stringed them and I have broken them off into like 1/2 inch pieces. You don't want this large green bean. You want them almost bite size. So think about the can that you would normally be using. That size in a nutshell. So I've blanched these for 5 minutes, and blanching is just basically throwing in fresh vegetables into already boiling water, allowing them to hang out, float around for a few minutes, and then we're going to throw them in a water bath. Now what the water bath does is it's just gonna preserve the color of our beans, make them really pretty, bright. I'm using 3 different beans that I grew in my garden this year. So I have rattlesnake beans, I have like blue lake green beans, and some Chinese long beans. I really like the combination together. Really has some good texture to it. So I'm just gonna let my green beans hang out in this really nice cool bath while I throw together our bechamel sauce. So I'm melting 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter in a skillet here. And I'm gonna add in 1 finely chopped onion. And I'm just gonna let the onion cook away there until it is tender, translucent, probably about 3 to 4 minutes. We're gonna add our mushrooms in there too, which I'm sure mushrooms are an interesting addition to green bean casserole for you if you're used to using like a cream of chicken. I know some people use cream of mushroom, but there's just something about green beans and mushrooms that just are the perfect marriage in a casserole. Really adds that little hearty bite to it. I'm also preheating my oven to 375, so our oven is ready, hot, waiting for our casserole to go in. Stir your onions frequently because we don't want any of the onions to burn. This is also why I like to do them in a small chop versus a larger. They just cook more evenly and you're just not biting into a large piece of onion. So the onions are starting to kind of brown up a little bit and turn just ever so slightly translucent. So I'm gonna add in 8 ounces of mushrooms. I'm using baby portobello mushrooms today, but feel free to use any kind of mushroom you like. Cremini mushrooms, chanterelle mushrooms, any kind of shroom will work in this situation. I'm gonna give that a good toss and make sure they're coated evenly in that butter. We wanna cook these mushrooms until they're just turning golden and they've sweated out all of that moisture. I've just lightly chopped these mushrooms too into slices. I really like that mushroom look when you're diving into the casserole. I'm using stainless steel instead of cast iron today because I don't want the cast iron to impart any dark color onto our mushrooms or our onions. Last but not least, I'm going to add 3 cloves of finely minced garlic. I'm adding that to the end because we don't want to burn that garlic. So if you've ever bit into burnt garlic before, you probably just now recovered. You're gonna cook this for about 30 seconds just until you start smelling that garlic. It's real fragrant. So I'm gonna take 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. So this is gonna be the basis and the thickener of our bechamel. And the thing about a bechamel sauce is once you learn it, you can use it so many times in the kitchen when you're cooking. So I'm gonna sprinkle that over and I'm going to give it a toss just to make sure all of our mushrooms and all of our onions are evenly coated. Now, you don't want to let this sit here and burn, but what we want is we want to take that raw flour flavor off. So we're just basically toasting the flour. Looks like a good ample coating, and I'm gonna pour in 1 1/2 cups of whole milk. Give that a good stir here. And I'm gonna add in a cup of chicken stock. So after you add your chicken stock, I'm gonna ditch this little guy here and I'm gonna grab a whisk. What we're looking for is we're wanting this to kind of gradually thicken slowly. This is also one of those things you don't want to throw on top of the stove, have it cooking away, and then go somewhere else because this really does have a tendency to stick. So we're just starting to come to a little bubble here, and we're gonna cook this probably about 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes. You don't wanna overcook it. I guess technically this would be our cream of chicken in the grand scheme of things. And I have no aversion to canned cream of chicken. I just think it's just so much richer when you make it at home. You can really also control the whole entire flavor too. So we're just really starting to really bubble here, and I can tell that my sauce is really thickening already, simply just how the bubbles are bubbling, for lack of a better word. Now, I'm not gonna cook this until it's just super, super thick. I'm basically just wanting to add that little bit of thickness before we add the heavy cream. So I've turned the heat off of my bechamel here, and I'm gonna add in half a cup of heavy cream. That's really gonna give us that richness, that really good stick to your mouth feel, what you want in a really good sauce. Now let's season it up a little bit. I'm gonna add in a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of pepper, half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of garlic powder and onion powder, just to give us that little flavor punch. And last but not least is a 1/4 teaspoon nutmeg. Of course, that's completely optional, but it really adds that little bit of something. You know when you're sitting having a dish and you're like, there's just something there that's so good in the back of your mouth in a sauce? The nutmeg is that. And it really goes well with the green beans too. I'm actually just gonna go ahead and give it a taste. Absolutely perfect. This is one of those times when you wanna go ahead, just dip a spoon in there, or your finger if you're not watched by the health department, and give it a taste, because whatever it tastes like now is what it's gonna taste like in our dish. So now that we have gotten that all pulled together, I'm gonna grab my other utensil here, and I'm going to add half a cup of Parmesan cheese. I'm waiting to the end, and I'm just gonna fold this in. I'm gonna reserve a half cup for our topping. It is so pretty. I can barely say bechamel. I don't even know if that's right, so don't ask me to spell it. I mean, I guess the roundabout way is it's just one of the classic 5 mother sauces. So basically a really good, creamy, all-encompassing white sauce that can be a base from everything. Of course, from green bean casserole to mac and cheese. And you know, it's relatively easy to make. I think people think they hear the name and it just sounds a little intimidating. The amount of ingredients that goes into it also creates a large amount, so it's perfect for large dishes. And I think like price ratio, when you're making, like buying something from the can versus a fresh bechamel, it like definitely evens out. The taste itself is worth putting the elbow grease in for. So you'll want a 9x13 casserole dish here, and I've got a deeper dish casserole pan just because I don't want it bubbling over in the oven. So we roughly need about 2 pounds of green beans. Obviously I cooked about 14 pounds here, so don't follow my lead. And you can do this in the same pot that you cook your bechamel in, or I actually just put my green beans down into the actual casserole dish itself, and then I will pour the sauce directly over it. Looks about like 2 pounds. I'm gonna do one more just for good luck. Might as well use them. All right, now comes the good stuff. Just gonna pour that delicious sauce directly over. Look how ooey gooey and creamy it is. So perfect. I could literally eat this like a soup. And look at that Parmesan cheese. It's so gooey and stringy. So give it a good stir. You just want to be sure and coat every one of your green beans. We don't need a dry green bean in our casserole here. And then just even it out. Last but not least, let's make a topping. So to make our topping, I'm melting 2 tablespoons of butter, just over a low heat. Don't let it burn. Can't really come back from that. So our butter is melted, and I'm gonna add some familiar key players to our topping here. Just some breadcrumbs. You can also use panko if you want an extra crunch there. And I just want to coat this just so it browns up ever so slightly. So once it looks like coarse crumbs, you know it's good to go. I'm going to sprinkle that directly on top of our casserole. I love a good breadcrumb topping. And here we go with our crispy fried onions, because, you know, you can't just steer too far off the course without having something familiar there. And I like a lot, so I'm really going to layer it up on there. And I'm going to add just a few chopped pecans. I had some on hand, and I really love a little bit of nut crunch whenever I'm doing green beans. And last but not least, just to add that extra little bit of touch, some Parmesan. just to brown up on top and really look beautiful. I'm gonna throw this in a preheated 375-degree oven and cook it for roughly 35 to 40 minutes. You wanna cook it until it's bubbling up from the center. The cheese is all melted on top, and we've got that really nice, crunchy topping. I mean, could it get any better than that? We've got a hot piping green bean casserole fresh out of the oven sitting right in front of me, and it looks absolutely beautiful. Super crisp, super crunchy on top. Take this out of the oven and let it kind of hang out for, you know, a good 15 to 20 minutes or more. This is something you can definitely serve at room temperature, so it doesn't have to be piping hot. Let's give it a taste. I'll go for this corner piece here. Leagues above the old-timey traditional green bean casserole. I love the crunchiness of the fresh green beans. It's so good with the bechamel, and then you've got the crispy crunchy top and the ooey gooey cheese. Some cool beans casserole, if you ask me. Poof, casserole pan. Let's dive in. I'm just hovering over it like a vulture with a spoon. Exciting, huh? I'm hot over here. I was so sick of picking green beans. It was every day. I have green bean casserole memories of, you know, from my childhood, and honestly, they're just not that good. It's just like the most boring casserole ever. So I guess that's why I wanted to like make it fresh, is because I just thought the others kind of